If you're struggling to save for your kids' future college education, you might be able to relate to this mom who wrote, I was wondering if you'd mind sharing how you're saving for your kids' college. I'm feeling really guilty that we haven't started yet. I want to set them up for a better future, but right now it feels impossible. Even though we're both working full-time jobs, I'm still paying off my own student loans, and with childcare, it feels like there's nothing left. We'd love to buy a house and have more kids, but even with just one, money feels really tight. I'd love to hear how you're making it work if you don't mind sharing. So, to be completely honest, we are not saving for our kids' college education right now. Actually, we haven't since they were born. And I know this is like something that you're concerned about. It's something that I'm also concerned about, but I want to kind of explain to you why we're not, and hopefully you'll feel at least a little bit of solidarity. And if you get to a point where you are ready to save for your kids' college education, then we'll talk about that here too. But first of all, the reason why we are not saving for our kids' college education is, just as you mentioned, there is nothing else left. Now, the way that we have done our budget is like, it's not that there's nothing left, as in like we're paying for all of our expenses and then we don't have any money to set aside for saving. It's like we are paying for all of our expenses, but we are prioritizing other savings goals above our kids' college education. And some of those savings goals are like our own retirement, as well as just like our 6 month emergency savings. Now, depending on where you kind of are in your life, you might need like a 3 to 9 month emergency savings. And then we're also saving for other things to just pop up in our life because you own a home and you have a vehicle and other sinking funds. So between all of those other categories, even though both my husband and I both work, they're just the college education just does not fit, hasn't made it up the line of priorities just yet. So another reason why we're not saving for my kids' college education is because I actually did not have any parental help when I went to college. So I did go to a 4-year college university, but when I went to college, if we haven't hung out before, I'll just give you a little bit of background, is like I have 5 siblings. The situation growing up is like my mom ended up becoming a single mom because we were in a very severe controlling situation. I'm not super sure how much I can say on YouTube without it being like flagged, so I'll let you kind of infer the details. So to try and get us away from that situation, my mom then became a single mom of 6 kids. And so I'm sure you can imagine how challenging that is for someone that may find themselves in a very similar situation. So because of that, like, we were very poor for the majority of my life. And I remember getting to like senior year, and my mom sat me down, and I remember distinctly we were in the car for some reason, and she just basically just told me like, hey Brianna, the only thing I can afford to pay for is your college application, and then after that you're on your own. Now, I did have one sibling ahead of me, so I'm like the second in the line of 6, and my sister had already graduated from high school and she was attending a community college. But just having that realization from my mom of like knowing like, and like I knew that there wasn't going to be very much financial help at all. Like, I didn't have my own car, I didn't have my own cell phone. So like realizing and knowing like, okay, if this is the college that I'm considering, my mom is not going to be able to help in any manner whatsoever. And so knowing that, like, I valued my education so much more going through that experience, that has really shaped the way that my husband and I have looked at college education for my sons. So to did I have challenges getting through college? Yes, but because I was paying for it on my own, looking at the experience of me and my other peers around me who their parents were paying their way through school, I noticed that there was a very big distinction between how we approached our studies, how we just like held ourselves in class, how we approached life in general, because they were much more like laissez-faire, like, oh, we're here for the experience. Like, it's not a big deal if I flunk out of this class. Now, was that the case with everybody? No. But there was just a very big difference between how I approached my studies, because I valued my studies so much more, knowing like I'm going to have to pay for it myself. Because of that, I also really contemplated the classes that I enrolled in. I made sure that they counted for everything that I was trying to get a degree in, and just the whole value perception and the way you have to approach it when you're paying for it on your own, and the other life decisions that you're making. Like, choosing my first car and, commuting to and from school and where I decided to live and all of those questions, all of those challenges went into my entire college experience. And I do feel like I'm a lot better off for them because I had to evaluate them from a completely different perspective from other people that maybe their parents were, paying for their housing and their books and their car, but their classes were on their own and they had to figure that out themselves. Or, maybe it was someone that their parents were paying for their schooling as long as they met certain grades, but then they had to figure out housing and everything else that they wanted to do. Every parent's going to approach it a little bit differently, but coming from my experience where I didn't have any help whatsoever and realizing, wow, I can still do this and people can still do this and this is still possible. Is it hard? Is it challenging? Are there, certain circumstances and sacrifices that you have to make to get through it? Yes, but it also really shaped me as an adult. And even though it was hard and challenging, like I do think that what I experienced was incredibly valuable. And I think that if that's a situation that my sons find themselves in, now, do I want that for them as their parent? No. And we'll talk about that here in a second. But if that is something that they find themselves in, I I don't think it's necessarily a right that kids should receive or perceive as a right from their parents for them to pay for. Like a college education beyond high school for me isn't a requirement as a parent to provide that for your child as much as many of us would want to and desire to. That's just the reality of the situation. I would much rather be in a place where maybe my kids struggle paying, their way through college, but I know that when it comes to my point in my life where, I may be a big financial burden to them, I'm not burdening them with that financial responsibility at the end of my life just because I paid their way through college. And I know that some people in our generation right now and probably future generations are finding themselves in where it's like their parents now feel like because they paid their kids college and to help them out financially throughout their life that now their kids have this responsibility to take care of them financially as they get a lot older in life. And I just don't want to put my kids in that situation. I don't think that's fair for them because college education is like usually it's optional, right? Whereas when you are at the end of your life, there's so many different variables and so many different medical challenges that some of them are unforeseeable that it can just be really detrimental to your family. And that's kind of how we have decided to approach it. Now, from my husband's standpoint, because he also has a say in this as well, like he didn't go to college. He's not the type of person that learns well from sitting down and book learning and book reading. And like he went to college and he tried it out and he was like, this is not for me. I'm not interested in pursuing this. And he disenrolled himself relatively quickly after like his experience. So, your kids might get to a point, and this is also one of our considerations too, is like they might grow up and they might be in a situation where college is not the right option for them. Maybe the best option for them is trade school or, there's this whole kind of conversation right now in our society, really even evaluating like how helpful is college? Is college still worth it? Like maybe we should, and I'm hoping that this conversation continues as a society, like maybe we need to bring back more trade schools, more on the job learning, more apprenticeships, so like there's still so much time because of the ages of my kids that a lot of things can change and happen by the time they get to the point in their life where they're ready to be enrolled in college, that I'm just like not worrying about it because so much can change. Now, even if they do get to a point where they are at the place where they're ready to go to college, and again, let's say we're not financially helping them out whatsoever, if we're still not in a place where we could in some manner, some of the things that I found super helpful when I was in that situation is going through the FAFSA application, which is going to identify like if you're eligible for any, grants or scholarships and certain loans that have lower interest rates, which in my situation I was because of the circumstances that I found myself in, as well as, other varying metrics like, your your GPA and, all those other things. So there could still be a lot of really good resources out there for my kids when they get to that point, if we're not able to financially help them in any manner whatsoever. I don't know where I heard this story. I probably heard this story very like third hand. So who knows how true it was through the grapevine, that there was someone that had gone through college and their parents had said like that they were going to have to do college all on their own. And so they were very invested in their education, made very, again, like me, very, strategic decisions, how they approached college and how they went through college. And then when they graduated college, actually, then their parents came back and they paid off all of their loans. Their whole experience through that story, or at least I guess my perceived experience of what that would be, because again, I don't think I heard this firsthand, was just like, wow, how many life lessons did that person pick up by making all those decisions on their own? And then also like how incredibly blessed must they have felt like when they actually got on the other side and their parents did pay for, like their entire education. Like I just wonder from like an outsider's perspective and now as a parent's perspective, like would they have found that so much more valuable and so much more confident in their decisions? And how much of a blessing would that have been to them? So like that's also, another opportunity, like just because you're not able to pay for it like right now, or even if you're not able to pay for your child's education while they're enrolling and kind of going through that experience, that doesn't mean that by the time they graduate that you don't find yourself in a completely different financial situation. And I think sometimes like if we give our kids a certain expectation of how we can or cannot help them as they grow and, as they get closer to going into college, then they might also have some level of entitlement as to like what you should help them with and how you should help them. And, just like maybe just not value it quite as much because there's less sacrifice involved. But again, that's very dependent on, like the individual child and the parent and, their parenting perspective and how you've kind of helped shape and coach them into a person up to that point. So I'm not saying that that's bad or that's wrong. I'm just here sitting in my cozy corner, just kind of evaluating that whole entire perspective. Now, so outside of the things that we've already kind of talked about, even if you're not able to currently right now save any portion towards your child's college education, let's talk about some things that you can do. So for us, what we do is that if our kids get a cash gift, which they do sometimes receive, for Christmas and birthdays and, etc., we actually, instead of using that cash gift to buy them a present from whomever gave them that cash, we actually take the cash and we put it aside for college. And we haven't currently opened them a specific college education account because they might get to the point where as they get older, they're like, I don't want to do college. I want to do trade school, or, maybe they want to take a gap year, or maybe they might want to use it to purchase a car. So, you can evaluate that on your own. Like, is that the best financial decision that we're making? Probably not. But, like you as a parent, you kind of got to pick your battles, I guess. But it is something that we could still do if we get to the point where, there's kind of a big lump sum of money sitting over here that, maybe we should. Actually, we probably should. Brianna, make that a mental note for yourself. You need to open your kid's savings account and put that money over there. So you could put that, in just a regular savings account, or do those contributions if your kids receive cash gifts, throughout their lifetime, and any amount really helps, right? So it doesn't have to be that you're contributing something every single month, especially if things are tight, which they really can be when you have, young kids, like between, as you said, between childcare and, all the other expenses, and you're also paying off your current loans. Like, yeah, I can completely empathize with your situation. And I think a lot of other parents can. If you are getting, $50 here or $25 here or $10 here, that then it can still sometimes feel like for you, like, oh, I'm still making a wise financial decision for my kids in the future, even if we're not able to contribute to that on a normal basis right now. Now, the other thing too is if they're not getting cash gifts from other friends or relatives or something like that, you could make a cash gift contribution to their education account, whether it's in your savings account, like we're currently doing, or in a college education account, which we'll talk about here in a second. You could do that for their birthday or for their college, or not college, or for Christmas, or for for any other holidays that you would celebrate with them. So if like normally you would budget a certain amount of money, like maybe you could half that amount, like especially when they're so young, they don't really care so much how many gifts they're getting or what type of gift they're getting. They're just happy to open a gift. So you could say like, okay, well, maybe I can budget $100, but maybe we're only going to spend like, I don't know, $30 on their gifts, and we'll put the other 70 in their college savings account for their future. So that's another way that you could do it. And even if, again, you're not contributing every single month, you're at least contributing a little bit towards that for them, later on in their life. Another thing that you could do, which I know this is going to be like, not, you may not find yourself in this circumstance, is like I actually started my side business so that way I could earn extra money, because again, we are in a situation right now where everything is tight. Like prices are increasing. Price of groceries has gone up significantly in the past few years. And so I wanted to start another business, not only just because I was passionate about it and because I, loved the subject matter. Like I work at an accounting office, so I do bookkeeping and help prep tax returns and stuff like that. But I am super passionate about personal finances. And so I decided to go ahead and start offering and like starting my own business for people that wanted like one-on-one coaching with their finances. So like if that's something that you have the capacity for or are interested in, like maybe it's like you pick up like a side job or, start your own business or something like that. Even if it's just like, once every 2 weeks, like maybe you work at the grocery cashier or, you do like, what are those like grocery pickups? I can't think of it right now, like Instacart or something like that, where you're only like working once every other week or something like that. But any amount that you are earning, you could then funnel into your kids' college education if you don't have other financial goals that you're trying to take care of first, like we are currently with my family. Like, so even though earning extra money through my side business, it will be helpful for my kids' future education. Like there are other goals that my husband and I are trying to meet first, that it's like, okay, we have to check off these goals first. And then any extra money that I earn from my business will be able to be funneled into that in the future. So, like that is one way that I'm trying to contribute to my not only my son's future education, but also like the stability and safety of my household. And it's fun. Like it's fun to be able to have some of these like side pursuits that you just enjoy, but then you also get paid for. Like that's amazing too, right? So that could be an alternative for you if you find yourself in a season of life where you're like, oh yeah, I do have margin in my schedule, and this is another way where maybe you could use it first to pay off your own loans. And then because you're used to that payment already being in your budget to pay off your own personal loans, maybe that money could then be set aside towards your kids' education. You would eventually love to, buy a house someday and have more kids, but it's hard with all the other expenses. So again, maybe you might have to go through those lists of priorities and say, what is going to take precedence on the income that we get? So if you're in a situation where you'd like to kind of talk more in depth further, I actually have a monthly like office hours where we can hang out as other moms and like talk about some of this stuff. So if that's something that you're interested in, I'll leave the details in the description. But then one other reason why we're not currently investing for our kids' college education is that I personally feel like as a parent, there are other priorities that we have, other obligations that we have to our kids while they're still a kid that we should prioritize over college education. And I reserve the right to change my mind in the future. But for example, I already know that my kids are going to need braces. So based off of how their teeth are developing and all of the conversations we've had with their dentist, and also my own dental history, like I had to have braces, I had to have a palate expander. Like I already know that that was something that I graciously passed on to my kids, that they will probably need the exact same thing. And that's expensive, right? Like I'm not in that season of life where we have to paying for any of that. But if we're comparing the cost of me paying for it, my husband, their dad paying for it because they're kids and that we have certain insurance benefits, versus paying for dentists and orthodontist corrections as an adult, which my husband had to do, like there's a huge expense gap between paying it and covering those costs as a dependent versus covering those costs as an independent, just from an insurance standpoint. So as a parent, I feel that it's much more appropriate for me to pay for those things that would be less expensive to cover as a child than for things that would cost the exact same for us to cover once they're an independent, or once they get past 18. So I just feel like that's my obligation as a parent to help pay for those things. And there's other obligations, right, as a parent that I feel very strongly that my financial focus should be on those things when they are a kid. For example, having really good, reliable, safe childcare. So if you're in a point where it's like, okay, paying for this really, expensive childcare that you feel your kid is safe, will really thrive in, is a really happy, good environment, versus like paying for childcare that maybe not be at the same level, but you could also then save for college education. Like, I much rather you go with the, childcare that you feel safe and secure and happy and your child is going to thrive in, even though it's more expensive. And that means you're not going to be able to pay for or save for your kids' college education, just for all of the reasons that we've already discussed. So yes, in an ideal world, it would be great if we could fund retirement and fund, college and pay off our homes like with a 15-year mortgage loan, and, live completely debt free, and have all of these great things. But the reality is for many of us, myself included, that there's just not enough finances to be able to tick all of the boxes while we're in this season of life. Like, it's called this season, this messy middle season, for a reason. And usually in this season of life that we currently find ourselves in, there is going to be a limitation of cash. And we have to be really strategic and really mindful of why we're making the decisions that we are and how we're prioritizing those expenses. So if you find yourself in a situation where you are ready to start investing for your kids' future and you're ready to open a college education savings account, then the one that will probably be the best tax advantaged account is a 529 college savings plan. So if you've never heard of it, let me give you a few of the breakdowns. Is there's certain tax benefits for you opening this type of savings account. So as of today's conversation, and tax laws change every year. If I have learned anything from working at an accounting firm, it's that every year there's new tax laws and new regulations. So, who knows what the future will hold. But as of right now, it does mean that your investment in the 529 college saving plans grows tax-free when used for qualified educational expenses. And qualified educational expenses currently means that it's things like tuition, books, and room and board. We have conversations and questions all the time with parents at the accounting firm that I work at that's like, hey, well, can we count this as a college expense, and can we count that as a college expense? And my kid has a cell phone, is that a college expense? And it's like, no, this is what's considered a college expense. But some states also offer tax deductions or credits for certain contributions. So depending on your state, that might be something that you might want to look into as well. If you're looking for one, the financial advisor that I personally have, I absolutely love. I don't know if they're currently accepting clients, but if you're looking for a financial advisor, I'll link his name and his firm. I was talking to two different financial advisors at the time. We needed life insurance, and we wanted to change some. We wanted to open some different retirement investing accounts, and so we were having these conversations. And one of the financial advisors I was talking to, they were talking to us about insurance, and they were really pushing $1 million life insurance policy. And my financial advisor, the one that I currently have that I'll link for you below, if you're looking for one, I just felt like he listened to us, because I was like, okay, this is this is what we need. This is how much we feel is appropriate for our situation for life insurance, and we talked to him about what his recommendations were. Whereas this other financial advisor, he was trying to sell us on a $1 million policy, for one for me and one for my husband. And if you don't know anything about insurance, the insurance agents earn money based off of how much of a policy they sell. So I just kind of felt like you don't have my best interests at heart. You're not listening to what I'm saying. You're just trying to make the best money for this policy. So it was just really nice feeling like my financial advisor listened to us and understood where we were coming from, and he's been exceptional working with him throughout throughout our history together, which has been about 7 years. And you don't have to be in the same state that he's in if you're interested in work within. By the way, this is not sponsored. Okay, he does not know that I'm referring you, which is why I say I don't know if he is taking clients or not. But he lives in a different state than I do. We did a whole bunch of video calls, and we still do video calls, and he connects pretty regularly. So yeah, if you're looking for one, highly, highly recommend. I think we addressed all your questions, but if we didn't, if there's something else that we should still kind of talk through, feel free to continue this conversation in the comments. But now it is your turn. If you are another mom listening to this conversation and you have a question that you would like to submit for a future episode, I'll leave the details where you can submit a question as well. But if you enjoyed today's conversation and are looking for more similar conversations about this or other topics similar to this one, then I'll link up a playlist for you to check out next.